Hey everyone, it's the Koopa Man. Remember a long time ago, before he went crazy and manic depressive, the YouTuber The Spoony One made vlogs about the show called Deadliest Warrior on Spike TV, eventually culminating into a parody video where he did the Deadliest Warrior with Megazord and the Showa-era Mechagodzilla. And it wasn't supposed to be taken seriously and was made to make fun of a really stupid idea. Remember when such a concept was considered such a stupid idea? Yeah, we're gonna talk about Death Battle today, folks. And why it is, was, and always will be an absolute train wreck piece of shit series with a fan base as brain dead as Matt Pat's game theorists to boot. So, what is Death Battle then? First released in 2010 on the website Screw Attack before being bought up by Rooster Teeth, Death Battle is a web series that, as I alluded to earlier, rips off the premise of the Spike TV show Deadliest Warrior, but with fictional characters. And I repeat myself, the Spoony One did this premise as a joke because it was a dumb idea, and they took it 100% seriously. Hosted by two guys named Wiz and Boomstick, each episode would start by going over each character's feats and abilities before having an animated battle that plays out the theorized result. While they allege to do their research for their results, much of the time it's done as rule of cool or just to farm clicks. But we'll get into that. They do have rules, at least allegedly, it's never been written down anywhere, but what is consistent is this. 1. Both characters do not have any prep time. They will only know each other if they do so in a canon form, we'll get into that, and characters would only have arsenals available to them as if they were going on a regular outing. Again, we'll get into that. 2. The battle must result in a fatality, even if either character is a pacifist. Yes, this is a stupid idea. If something occurs equivalent to a fatality, this will count as well. 3. Both characters will be in their prime and at their most powerful. Sometimes. Again, we'll get into this. 4. All canon media will be considered. I feel like a broken record, but we'll get into this. 5. No assists. Do I even need to say it? And 6. No terrain advantages. The rules are, however, like I said, suggestions rather than a solid guideline. Like any popular internet media that tells its fans that they are the be-all and end-all, they tend to be majorly inconsistent. Like, you can cite examples of all these rules being broken or new rules appearing out of the ether just to get the results they want, which is what it is at the end of the day. Not even the WWE or the boxing associations during Mob Rule were as fixed and scripted as Death Battle results are. But enough beating around the bush. If we're gonna break this down, we need to point out the flaws by listing examples and use them to highlight the problems with Death Battle as a premise, and how they carry out the show overall. So let's get into it, shall we? Spawn vs. Kratos, Original Trilogy. While there's nothing wrong with this fight or its results, it highlights two issues that are frequent as the series goes on. One is that Kratos is from ancient Greece, while Al Simmons, aka Spawn, has access to modern technology, being a contemporary character. This alone creates a technological disadvantage between both fighters. Second is that there's a power imbalance between both characters. While it isn't as extreme as later examples, it needs to be restated that both characters are taken out of their peaks without external assists. Which means that Kratos would need the power of Pandora, which they'd count as an outside assist to stand a chance, whereas Spawn has taken on both God and the Devil and has come out the victor. And finally, the reason for the outcome they stated, Spawn is a character built to be Kratos' kryptonite. If one character can just casually walk up with the other character's weakness, it doesn't make a very fair fight and creates a very imbalanced, unfair matchup, which is a disservice to the concept and an insult to the viewer. Justin Bieber versus Rebecca Black. This is not a serious battle at all, and it's a problem with some of the earlier Death Battles. However, it's a problem that they've sort of been resolving as time goes on. Sort of. All it was 20 minutes of the host bitching about the current popular thing. Back when you were allowed to complain about the current thing and not worship it like a golden calf. Like, that's all well and good and all, but it isn't what people came to see. It was just a mean-spirited and obvious attempt to chase trends and clickbait, which in hindsight should have been a sign of things to come. Harry Potter versus Luke Skywalker. While there's no doubt that Luke using his Legends feats would utterly curb stomp Potter, there's a very obvious flaw in the battle in its entire premise. Almost immediately, Harry uses the killing curse to try to kill Luke. That is something that if you know anything about Potter lore, you know he would never under any circumstances do. This is the whole problem with the battles needing to result in a fatality. You have to compromise the morals of characters to achieve it to the point that they may as well be completely different characters. Batman! Sorry, I'm having seasonal allergies. Master Chief versus Doomguy. No, I don't call him Doomslayer, call him Doomguy. Let's start out with saying this. This video came out well before Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, which basically have Doomguy scaled to the same tier as literal gods. That said, the fact that Death Battle undersold Doomguy's feats from 1, 2, and 64, and overstated the power of Master Chief's bubble shield, as well as ignored the fact that Doomguy is capable of carrying more weapons on his person, which is a significant advantage, proves that even early on Death Battle didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Ryu Hayabusa versus Strider Hiryu. Okay, this is gonna be a tough one. While on the initial examination, Strider being from the far future and having better gear and technology, it would make sense he'd be the winner, right? Well, the thing is, Death Battle's research isn't as stellar as its defenders like to think it is, even in the early seasons. While at base, both characters punch roughly at the same weight class, Strider in his games never leaves that tier of power, whereas Ryu is capable of using Ninpo abilities to elevate his power significantly, as well as create a force multiplier through cloning abilities. This isn't even getting into the ridiculous feats he's capable of in the Dead or Alive series, or with the Dragon Sword in the Ninja Gaiden reboot/prequel series. The only way that Strider has a chance to compete is if they factored in the obviously non-canon Marvel vs. Capcom series, which in all likelihood they did. Otherwise, there's no way Strider is walking away from this one alive. Vegeta vs. Shadow and Mewtwo vs. Shadow. I hinted at this in my fandom video last year, but I will repeat the point here. Death Battle hates Shadow the Hedgehog, quite transparently. To do some research into the character's feats and abilities for this episode, I used the Versus Battles wiki. While it's not the definitive end-all and be-all, they do tend to oversell universes like Mario and Sonic, while underselling characters like Superman. I trust it far more than Death Battle because, thanks to being a wiki, it can be edited by anyone, primarily Versus Battles fans, and it's under a lot more scrutiny than Wiz and Boomstick's biased clickbait. On this website, Shadow in the era he would have been drawn from is listed as far higher tier than both Mewtwo and Vegeta. In Sonic 06, we're shown that Shadow wears power limiters, and when he takes them off, he's capable of fighting physical gods like Mephiles, who's able to replicate himself. Contrast that with Vegeta from the end of Z, and he couldn't even finish off Majin Buu, a character of similar strength to Mephiles. But I believe what happened is that because they got Team 4 Stars Lanny Pator to voice Vegeta, they didn't want him losing to a character that people, including themselves, found as lame. And so they'll follow up with Mewtwo with just to humiliate the character even further. Honestly, it really is the most likely scenario. Ragna the Blood Edge versus Soul Bad Guy. I'll keep this brief. From what Swordsman tells me and from my own research, I'm not fully convinced of this, the result is roughly what could have been expected. The issue is that the Ragna half of the video, they just glazed over BlazBlue's lore and story, which is probably a joke on the meme of BlazBlue lore is too complex. It really isn't. It's treated like a JRPG. That's how the game started life. It does show that they likely slouched on their research. Plus, it comes off as insulting to the BlazBlue fans, which, when you're insulting half of your intended audience, you're doing something wrong. Dr. Doom versus Darth Vader. Doom wins because he's anti-magic? That's not how that works. Han?
That's not how the Force works.
Thank you. The Force isn't magic, Master Yoda.
It's too big.
Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And where you should not. For my ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is. Life creates it. Makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us. And binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes, even between the land and the ship.
Thank you. The fact that Dr. Doom is one of the characters who requires prep time to be at his full potential and is unlikely to have a counter against Vader, such as an Il Salamiri, a species of force-resistant lizards that Thrawn famously had on him at all times, it's far more believable if Vader walked all over Victor like the bug that he is. At his strongest, Doom is a planet buster, sure, but Lord Vader?
The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
Thank you. Next, Wolverine vs. Raiden. Let's see what the Versus Wiki has to say. Raiden is in between tier 8 and 7, and Logan is tier 3 with adamantium claws, the thing he's most famous for. Between that and also being the only one with a healing factor so powerful he revived from being reduced to a skeleton, and the fact that if high sonic frequency swords would work on him, Silver Samurai would have defeated him eons ago, I'll leave it at that. Oh hey, they do know who Silver Samurai is in a later season. Much research, such variables. Pokemon vs Digimon. Let's not even get into the result. We can debate all day on whose collectible monster, dinosaur, dragon is stronger than whose, and who has the more absurd feats until the cows come home. That's completely irrelevant. The problem is the main factor in their explanation of why Wargreymon beat Charizard is because, in their own words, Pokemon are slaves. They made the season finale all about a retarded virtue signal. One that misses the entire point of the Pokemon franchise so tremendously, you start to wonder if they even understand the series at all. For a lot of people, this was a jumping off point. And looking back, I can't say I blame them. This is so outrageously tone-deaf, it beggars belief. And yet, there's still more to come. The Pony Trilogy. Sit tight, this is a multi-part entry. In Season 1, at the height of Brony Mania, Death Battle decided to capitalize on it by having a Hasbro battle between Rainbow Dash and Starscream from Transformers. Specifically the weakest version of Starscream, the Generation 1 cartoon Starscream. Of course, it resulted with them being utterly astonished that a super cute girl horse was able to curb stomp the robot weapon from space. The thing is, though, that the Friendship is Magic universe has a really high power ceiling, so those who are in the know, this outcome wasn't really all that surprising. Especially considering they picked a really weak Decepticon who's known for always losing and getting slapped about. Cut to a few seasons later where they have Pinkie Pie vs Deadpool from Marvel Comics. It ended up being another inconclusive joke battle, but if you ask me, because Pinkie was able to remove Deadpool as an enemy combatant, she's technically the winner. However, both videos caught a lot of flack from the anti-brony community. A group of people who think that ponies are the worst thing ever because they feel so ashamed of how they make their pee-pee tingle. Yeah, no, typical boomer tier shit and Philistines. So, in order to appease the anti-bronies and their pocket catheters, they had one last matchup. Twilight Sparkle vs Raven from Teen Titans, believing that it's entirely possible that a demon witch can defeat the pony and make the boomers and boomer tier cringe lords shut the fuck up. The problem? They're entirely wrong. Remember when I said the power ceiling was high in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic? Let me put this into perspective. By this point in the series, towards its end, Twilight Sparkle was a physical god, and I am not even exaggerating. Compare that to the fact that they largely ignored the context behind Raven's biggest feat, particularly the Titan's Tower lift, which they ignored the fact that she was performing that feat with Terra, who was doing most of the heavy lifting via geokinesis. Comparatively, Twilight Sparkle was able to move the sun and witness events so small and insignificant you could hardly admit they happened at all. But my friends, Raven is just a goth. And the world's strongest goth poses just as much threat to Twilight as its strongest termite. This was just a flagrant appeasement of people who just want their biases confirmed, and it was the point where I knew that Death Battle was just clickbait. If they could not be honest in the face of a bunch of outraged simps, they had no interest in honesty at all. Just clicks and ad bucks. But we'll continue regardless. Let's lightning round through a few examples before we get to the worst ones, shall we? Android 18 vs Carol Danvers. While the result is thankfully accurate, they achieved it by giving 18 powers she does not have outside of a non-canon video game. Great research, guys. Batman vs Black Panther and Aang vs Edward Elric. Not only are both fights examples of it not making any sense because none of the combatants are willing to kill, thus removing that makes it unrealistic, but they were both influenced by real-life political crap transparently, being Wakanda Forever and Kick Vic respectively. SpongeBob vs Aquaman. The Aquaman sex jokes weren't even funny when Sean Baby first told them, what is even the point of this crap? Deadpool vs Deathstroke. Deadpool wins because he's immortal. Deadpool vs The Mask. Deadpool loses because he isn't immortal. Alucard vs Dio.
No.
And now back to their more complicated fuck-ups. The Rooster Teeth battles. You knew these were coming. Yang Xiaolong vs Tifa Lockhart, Blake Belladonna vs Mikasa Ackerman, and Carolina vs the Meta. I don't think I need to tell you that the Rooster Teeth's own versus battle show might have a little bit of a bias towards the Rooster Teeth's own characters. Even fans of Ruby said those fights were transparently biased as hell. particularly Yang vs. Tifa. When the power scale of Final Fantasy is so absurdly high, you start to wonder if they did their research at all. They also did one with Weiss versus a character from Persona, but it was clearly done as a transparent attempt of saying, see, we aren't biased guys, using a character that Rooster Teeth for some reason has no problems making into a jobber. Similar to Twilight vs. Raven, actually. And it isn't like it was just with Ruby, as to promote the new seasons of Red vs. Blue over the classic ones, they had their new character, Agent Carolina, fight a villain from those classic seasons, the Meta, and win in order to prove how she's not a Mary Sue and was so much cooler than those stinky old seasons. Truly a mark of a company and a franchise in obvious decline. The Mario vs. Sonic Quartet. Before I say anything, no, I'm not going to analyze the results or give a definitive answer of one way or another on these matchups, whether they were right or wrong. I am not here to confirm anyone's biases or fandoms, or whose 16-bit console preference was better. The power scaling of both the Mario and Sonic franchises by both their fandoms is an arms race that's so absolutely absurd I refuse to partake in any way. That said, these episodes did have quite a few obvious flaws regardless of the outcomes. While Knuckles vs. Donkey Kong sort of makes sense, as the Donkey Kong Country's Return series had DK do some pretty absurd stuff, so I'll give them a pass on that. The Tails vs. Luigi video is stupid by its very premise. Neither character would want to kill the other, in any circumstance, especially Tails. It was even a plot point in one of the comics that Tails would not even kill Eggman to save his planet if he could get away with it entirely. I keep hammering this point home again and again, but making non-killer characters into killers requires removing their character entirely, rendering the fight meaningless. This is the worst aspect of Death Battle in all honesty, and it is the one that will be with the series till it dies because it's its only consistent role. But speaking of inconsistency in Death Battle, look at the Sonic vs. Mario videos. They swap the outcome each time despite both universes remaining largely the same and both characters not increasing all that much in power. It was just a means of pandering one fanbase over the other. And in all honesty, the Mario vs. Sonic debate is stupid by its very nature. The console wars are over. It's time to grow up and get off the playground. It's making Chris Hansen look at you funny. Instead of thinking of ways where Sonic and Mario can kill each other, why not think of a way that they can be in a game together that is an Olympic sports spin-off? Can we just end these stupid wars and have some peace and unity? No? Okay, I'll just talk about the last bundle of episodes then. The Dragon Ball fights. You guys knew this was coming. Superman vs. Goku 1 and 2. And to be honest, I don't disagree with the outcome. What I disagree with is the way they carried it out. Amalgamating Superman with all canons is an idiotic idea, just as it's idiotic to do it with any character. All you needed to do was do what most people wanted and you'd still get the same result. Post-Crisis Superman defeats Anime Goku at that point in time very easily. I don't care about Planet Buster this or power scaling that. Superman by his very nature is a character who lives in a world of cardboard, and even his best feats, it's hinted that he's holding back. That's just who his character is. But then they had the nerve to say they'd never do a fight like this again after the second Goku vs. Superman fight, only for a few seasons later to do Hulk vs. Broly, Reverse Flash vs. Goku Black, and Thor vs. Vegeta. We don't even need to talk about those because they lied to their audience by making them to begin with. And then they made a third Superman vs. Goku anyway. I didn't watch it. I will not comment, but according to Tracer, it was done a lot more respectfully, even if the result was still the same. Still comes off like a desperate attempt to milk viewers to me, though. And that brings me to my final point, now that I'm done picking apart all these various episodes. Death Battle is nowhere near as good as we remember it as, and was barely good to begin with, looking at it objectively. To summarize the problems inherent in Death Battle, we have 1. A flawed premise, specifically the rule that each character must kill each other, which I have repeatedly stated defeats the point of it actually being the character more than half the time. 2. Inconsistent rules, such as how characters will be given assists such as Wily vs. Eggman, Iron Man vs. Lex Luthor, and others, terrain advantages such as Thanos vs. Darkseid or Ryu vs. Scorpion, rules appearing out of nowhere such as character psychology when it was used as a means to show why the Joker defeats Needles Kane, but then it never reappears again, and inconsistent applications of character peaks such as Deadpool's Schrodinger's immortality. 3. Poor attempts at research, such as how some characters are missing clear feats and traits while others are given powers they don't even have. 4. Poor reasoning, such as how they used every version of Superman in Superman vs. Goku both times, despite DC canon clearly stating that one is a completely different character from another, or how fights are decided to prove a point or to make a retarded virtue signal such as the Pokemon are slaves fiasco. 5. And finally, the obvious bias and favoritism fixing the fights. Otherwise, the Ruby fights would have gone a lot differently, and the fights would not be determined by audience drama, such as the anti-pony drama, the DC vs. Marvel fan rivalry, the Mario vs. Sonic fan rivalry, or just whatever is popular and current at the current thing because it just drives clicks. Admittedly, the latest released episodes of Death Battle have been, at least seemingly, rectifying these issues. Goku vs. Superman 3 was more about two opponents having fun rather than killing each other. Doctor Who vs. Rick Sanchez gave massive props to the Doctor instead of choosing the current trendy clique of Rick and Morty, and according to Tracer, Scooby-Doo vs. Courage was a blast. I still prefer the actual Scooby-Doo meets Courage the Cowardly Dog movie, though. However, the show is still hanging on a thread as its owner company, Rooster Teeth, gets further and further into a financial crisis and critical hot water each passing day. Which means it's only a matter of time before this obviously rabid show is taken out back and put down Old Yeller style. Maybe then we will be able to put together a versus battle premise that actually works and is based on logic, research, care, and scrutiny over just what generates more ad clicks. Until that day comes, though, this has been the Koopa Man. If you survived this long rant till the end, be sure to leave me a like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below on your least favorite Death Battle moments. Until next time, friends, game on.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.